If you're a parent or planning on becoming a parent like myself and you're anxious about how to save or invest for your kid's future, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to cover 5 of the main account options that you have available to you in order to save or invest for your kid's future, whether it's to buy their first house, save for college, save for vacation. This is one of the most common questions and sources of anxiety that I have with my clients that have kids. And I hear this all the time. What do I do? Which account do I open? Where do I put this money? I'm Andrew Baker. I've been a financial planner for 13 years, and I hear this all the time. My clients say, I wish somebody set up an account for me when I was a kid. So today, when I walk you through this video, it's meant to be educational and help steer you in the right direction so that you don't have the same regret for your own kids by the time they grow up. Stick around until the end because the last account that I cover is one of the most powerful options that you have available at your disposal. Now, before we get into the actual accounts, I want to take a step back and acknowledge something very simple but very abundantly clear. Kids are not cheap. They are expensive. And even though I've been a financial planner for 13 years, I never really sat down to look at how much do kids cost between when they're born and when they're 18 years old. This is increasingly important for me because at the end of this year, I'm gonna start the 2-year IVF process with my partner because we're looking to have kids in a couple of years as well. And so I was wondering, how much do they each cost by the time they're 18? So recently I looked up the numbers, and depending on where you live, parents will spend anywhere from $375,000 to $640,000 per child by the time that kid turns 18. Now that's not including college, that is just the cost of raising the kids. Obviously this varies between where you live throughout the country. It's more expensive here in California than it is in Iowa, for example. So it is important to understand what these numbers look like depending on where you live. But those numbers were pretty staggering when I looked that up, which is also why I typically recommend people who are planning to have kids to do their best to set themselves up financially before they have kids, because oftentimes when you have kids and we're not ready for them financially, that can cause a lot of stress in the relationship, in the financial plan. So if you can, plan ahead as best as possible before you start a family. Now, this is a question that I get probably every week from various clients that are parents. Andrew, which account do I open? Which one do I set up for my kids? Now, the problem with this question is that there's no right answer. It's not black and white. There's various types of accounts. They all have different benefits. They all have different drawbacks. They have different jobs. The way that they're taxed, the way that you can access that money is all very different. So you want to make sure to understand what your goals and your values are for this money for your kids before setting up any account. And it's not necessarily about magically picking the right one. It's more so about understanding the system and how they can each work together and which one to start with. Here's the order that I like to think of these accounts in. First and foremost, we have a high yield savings account. Number 2, a 529 plan. Number 3, a Roth IRA for kids. Number 4, a custodial brokerage account called a UGMA or UTMA. And then number 5, a custodial index fund portfolio inside that same UGMA or UTMA account wrapper, just used a little differently. Don't worry about memorizing those. I'm about to explain each one, and at the end, help you understand where you could start if you're starting from zero. Let's start with account number 1, a high yield savings account. This is the simplest one on the list and what I tell each parent to start with for a couple of reasons. The way that a high yield savings account works is it's like a normal savings account, meaning it's accessible, you can take the money out whenever you want, except a high yield savings account actually is earning 3 to 5% in interest rate compared to almost 0% at our everyday banks like Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. So when we're putting money aside for your future, for your kids, this is also where your emergency savings account for the family should be. But when we're setting aside money for future vacations or future healthcare costs, future daycare costs that you know you're gonna need that money in the next year, 2, 3 years on a rolling basis, a high yield savings account is the best place to house this money because there is zero risk. The money does not fluctuate in value. There's no hidden costs. You can access it whenever you want. And we know that those expenses are coming up. We just don't need the money right this second. So you absolutely want to make sure that that money is in a high yield savings account. So it's at least keeping up with inflation over the next month, 2 months, year, 2 years, that it's sitting there before you actually use it. And this is also a good place to put any money for the kids that you don't necessarily want to tie up for their future, like college or whatever else it may be. So the best way to fund this account is typically through an automatic, systematic contribution every time you get paid or once a month, so that every month money is going in there without you having to think about it. Set that up today with an amount that you can easily contribute without it giving you anxiety or anything like that. And get that started as soon as possible. That's the first step that I would take. Account number 2, a 529 education account. So this is the one that most parents have heard of, but very few actually understand it fully. A 529 is a tax advantage account specifically for education. Now, you put in after-tax dollars, so money that you've already paid taxes on, but when you put the money into the 529, it grows tax-free, so you're not having to pay taxes on it every year that it's growing. And when you take it out for qualified distributions for your kids' education purposes, it's tax-free as well when you take it back out. So there's definitely some great tax benefits that come with a 529 plan. You're essentially building a college fund that the government won't tax or can't tax when you actually take it out. Now, just know that this doesn't need to be just for college. Now covers K through 12 tuition up to $20,000 a year, which is huge. It can also cover trade schools, even student loan repayment up to certain limitations. And many states give you a state income tax deduction for contributing to your own state's 529 plan. So if you live in a state with income tax and you're not using its 529 plan, you might literally be leaving free money on the table, so make sure to do your research. Now, the catch, because there's always a catch, is that the money needs to be used for qualified education expenses. If you pull it out for anything else, you're not only paying income tax, but you're also gonna be penalized 10%. So this is a really important consideration, but this account works best when you're reasonably confident that your kid will need money for education expenses. Now let's talk about account number 3, a custodial Roth IRA for kids. This is one of my favorites, but of course there are very certain criteria that you need to meet in order to contribute to this for your kids. But it's a Roth IRA for kids. We all know that a Roth IRA is contributed with after-tax dollars, and it's one of the best retirement accounts because all of the money in that account over all of the years in compounding growth when you retire is 100% tax-free when you take it out. It's one of the most powerful investment vehicles for retirement. But here's the rule. Your children need to be making money or earned income in order to contribute to it. So as early as possible in their lives, start to pay them for certain jobs, whether it's babysitting, mowing the lawn, doing yard work, doing chores around the house, whatever it is that you might be able to hire them for in an official capacity so that they can be making earned income, that money can then be contributed to their Roth IRA. In 2026, they can contribute up to $7,500 a year, or 100% of what they actually earn, whichever is less. So if they make $3,000 in earned income for the year, then you can contribute $3,000. If they made $10,000 in earned income, then they can contribute the max of $7,500. Now the money goes in after tax, so when they pull it out of retirement, as I mentioned, it's 100% tax-free. Depending on when you start, your child has anywhere from 50 to 60 years of compounding growth ahead of them. So let's talk about a real number really quick to bring this to life. If you contribute $25 a month into a Roth IRA for a 10-year-old, and you invest into a basic broad market, low cost index fund, the money has the potential to grow to over $500,000 by the time your child reaches retirement. $25 a month turns into $500,000 simply because you started that compounding process so early in your kid's life. Also, imagine the financial money lessons that you're teaching them as well, because as they get older, you want to make sure that they understand these strategies and why you're doing these things so that you instill good money habits to your kids as early as possible. So if your kids are earning any money at all, open one of these. Now let's talk about account number 4, a UGMA or UTMA account. The UGMA or UTMA stands for Uniform Gifts to Minors Act or Uniform Transfers to Minors Act, depending on your state. It's a custodial brokerage account in your kid's name, and what makes this one different is the flexibility that this account offers. There's no restrictions on what that money can be used for or why. So it could be for down payment on their first house, it could be used for college education, it could be used to start their investment portfolio. There's no contribution limits that you need to be worried about, so it just compounds and grows based on whatever you're putting in, with no limitations attached. But here's the part you need to know before you open one. The money legally belongs to the child inside this account. Once they hit the age of majority, which is somewhere between 18 and 25, depending on where you live, the account legally transfers into their possession, and they have full control over that account. So if you've spent 15 years funding this account and your 18-year-old decides that they want to use it for quite literally anything, that's up to them. So this is definitely something to keep in mind depending on how you feel about that fact. Now, there's also something called the kiddie tax, which is important to keep in mind. The first $1,350 of unearned income each year is tax-free. The next $1,350 is taxed at the child's rate. So anything above $2,700 gets taxed at the parent's rate. So this is a great account for moderate contributions, but you want to be thoughtful as this grows and definitely consult a tax advisor on how this could impact your tax situation. And then account number 5, the custodial index fund portfolio. Now, again, this is technically the same type of account as a UGMA or UTMA, but you're using it for a completely different job. Instead of using it as like a flexible savings vehicle, you're using it as a long-term wealth building account invested specifically in low-cost broad market index funds and held for decades. Why is this so powerful? Well, there's 2 reasons. 1, long-term capital gains. When your child eventually sells those investments, they pay long-term capital gains rates instead of income tax. And if your kid's in a low tax bracket when they do this, which most kids are, that long-term capital gains rate can be as low as 0%. That's a tax treatment you literally cannot get in your own brokerage account. And then number 2, there's no contribution limits, like I mentioned before. Unlike a Roth IRA or a 529, there's no cap on how much you can put in it. So once or if you've maxed out the other accounts, this is where the rest can go. Year after year, decade after decade, compounding in index funds. This is how generational wealth is really built. It's not flashy, it's not complicated, it's just a very straightforward strategy of letting money do the work over decades in the stock market. I would recommend starting with a high yield savings account because the first thing that we want to do is establish habits around saving for your kid, just getting into that psychological mindset of, okay, this amount of money is going towards my kid's future. It's not for my present future, it is for my kids. And so that can be a change for a lot of parents. And so I'd rather you put money into something that's easily accessible whenever you want without penalties or taxes, just in case something pops up in the short term that maybe you actually do need that money for. But once that account's established, you feel good about your expenses in the coming year or 2, you feel good about the amount you have in your emergency savings account and this high yield savings account for your kids, then we can work into other buckets from there, but definitely start here. Now from there, obviously the next bucket really comes down to what you value most. If you are highly confident and you feel very specifically wanting to save for education purposes only, a 529 would be a great account to consider. If you like the idea of it being more flexible and maybe you want to save for their first down payment on a house or for their wedding or whatever it is, then maybe considering a UTMA with a index strategy involved. There's a quote I like, and I know it's gonna sound cliche, but the best time to open these accounts for your kids are the day they're born. The second best time is today. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to start to get into the habit of allocating money into the right buckets. And this applies to your whole financial plan, not just where you're putting money aside for your kids. In the next video, I talk about how wealthy people use debt to build wealth, because another strategy that a lot of people implement that I talk to my high income earners about is not just about kid specific accounts, but how to plan for their future simply by building more wealth of their own by leveraging good debt into cash flowing, appreciating assets. It's a whole other type of a strategy that can complement these buckets as well. And so just be open-minded to understanding that there's more than one way of doing things. It's just about figuring out what's best for you.